Hey, I'm Derrick Evans. I'm the West Virginia legislator who was arrested on January 6th. I went there, like so many others, to peacefully exercise my natural God-given rights of free speech for not only myself but the people that I was representing from my district in West Virginia. And I'm happy that you guys showed up here to listen to everybody. Thank you guys for coming. As I said, I was an elected member of the West Virginia State House. I went there to exercise my natural God-given rights that day. Free speech, not only is it natural God-given rights, but it's protected by the U.S. Constitution, the First Amendment. I found myself on the east side of the building very early that day. There was a huge line around 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. There was already a line over a mile long to get into to listen to Trump speak. I've heard Trump speak multiple times. I knew there were other speakers on the east side of the building, and I thought, I'm going to go ahead and make my way down that way, and that way I can be towards the front to get to meet some of these people and listen to them speak about some other topics. And then I was like, it's a long drive home. I'll listen to Trump speak on the way home. That was my mindset. So as Dr. Gold said, on the east side of the building, there were veterans in wheelchairs. There were families there with young children and older people. And there was a street preacher there. There was honestly, a church session broke out at one point where people were just praising and singing and worshiping. It was amazing to see it. It was absolutely joyful. Long story short, some people to the far right moved the bicycle racks and started walking through. And then where I was at in the middle, the police officers started moving the bicycle racks and let everybody come on through to the steps. I'd been to D.C. multiple times and sat on those steps. Didn't think it was a big deal. Was on the steps and found myself standing towards the top, but not the main top, standing there for an hour or two with my back turned. I live streamed all of this, by the way, on Facebook. I had a pretty big following because, where I was an elected official, and I live streamed every single bit of it. I didn't think that I was doing anything criminal, or at least not facing decades in prison for it. So I live streamed it, and I'll never forget there was a moment where a young couple walked by, and they were standing right beside them. And I've replayed this in my head 100 times because it was a moment that changed my life. The man looked at the woman and said, "Let's go all the way up and touch the doors, and then we'll go home, just so we can say we touched the door." And I thought, I've been standing here for almost 2 hours. Nothing's happened. I'm going to walk up there as well to touch the door and go home. That's why I started making my way towards the East Columbus doors, which we now know were open from the inside. The big magnetic doors that you guys have seen, those are the doors that I walked through. So as I get up there, almost there, that's when the doors start to open. And at that moment, it was just a surge of people. I would explain this as if you had general admission tickets to a big rock concert, right, and you've been waiting all day long to try to get in there and get the best seat of this concert, it was exciting. I mean, we were excited, we were chanting, we were, hooping and hollering, but it wasn't violent by any means, but there was excitement in the air. And so when those doors opened, everybody wanted to get in there. We thought that, honestly, I felt that I was allowed to go in there. I didn't think it was a big deal. And so I walked through the doors. This is all on, still on my social media now, my new social media, because we're all deplatformed. But so everything I'm saying, you can watch the video for yourself. I thanked a police officer for his service. He gave me a fist bump as I'm walking through the door. Okay, never once told me to leave. I said, "I thank you for your service. I have nothing but respect for you." He gives me a fist bump. So I walked on inside. I spent 10 minutes inside the public rotunda area. I walked back out the same set of doors that I entered, and we'll get to the rest of it later, but that led to me facing 24 years in prison. I was on the east side of the building, and the same sentiments. Throughout the entire day, almost everyone in the crowd was constantly reminding everyone, be peaceful, be respectful, because we knew the media, anything that we did as conservatives, that they were going to twist that and use it against us. And we also knew that there were rumors of potentially Antifa, BLM people, agitators in the crowd. We knew that was a possibility. I didn't see that, but once again, I was on the east side of the building. That's important to know that, because one of the things used against me on my video is towards the end of the video, and when I'm in the building, you can hear me reminding everyone, this is our house, be respectful, no violence. Well, the government wanted to say that I was saying that because I was seeing violence and destruction taking place, which is not true. We'd been saying that throughout the entire day, reminding everyone, because we knew what the media would do. I don't think we realized just how evil the media really is when it came to this, to be honest with you. Yes. So when we walked through those the doors, there was no velvet rope or anything right there. But it's weird because just like Dr. Gold said, we went straight over to the ropes and then started walking back and forth along the ropes. I mean, it was a mind-blowing as to how peaceful and respectful everyone was on that day in that building. And I'd said this even during everything. I wanted to go in the building. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. That's my house. Those people work for us. And so I was in there to, exercise that freedom of speech. I wanted to go in the building, but if I did not want to go in the building, there was no way that I was not going in the building at a certain point. When the crowd started going in there, and once again, it wasn't violent, it was excitement. People were, once again, if you're waiting around outside for that, rock concert and the doors open, you're going in whether you want to or not. And then as she said, it was almost impossible to get back out the door from people just constantly. I mean, you got thousands of people funneling through a double door. I mean, you just could not get out of there if you wanted to. So before I forget, I just want to first point out there's been almost 1,000 arrests so far of January 6 patriots. And not a single time has there been an incident with law enforcement agencies, right? No one has fought back. No one has resisted.
Right.
We all peacefully turned around, put our hands behind our backs, even though we knew that we did not deserve what we were getting, because we're law-abiding citizens. And I want to make that clear with all the things going on in the world. 1,000 arrests, and not a single time has that happened so far. The other thing I want to say is I don't know about everyone else. I'm going to speak for them, but I think it's fair to say, at least most, I know I do, I suffer right now from a little PTSD, a little bit of survivor's guilt because I'm here. I know what it's like to be there, and these guys are still sitting in prison right now, and it's heartbreaking. I just wanted to say that before I forgot. So for me, when I got home on January 7th, or the late January 6th, on the 7th, I had a local attorney reach out to me and said, you need to retain counsel right now, because I was one of the initial faces of January 6th. Myself, Big O Barnett, who put his feet up on the desk, and Jacob Chansley, who the Shimon, the horns on his head. The media made us the face at me because I was an elected official. They used me to paint the narrative that it was Republicans who did all these crimes, and I was everywhere. And I'm just a small town country boy from West Virginia, you know what I mean? I'm not used to this, was not expecting that. And so on January 7th, my attorney reached out to them and said, hey, I'm representing this guy. If you guys want him, let him know. I've got 4 kids, all under the age of 5 at the time. My fear was them kicking in the door and traumatizing my kids. That was my biggest fear in that moment. And so on January 7th, he reached out and told him I would turn myself in, which I would have. On January 8th, once again, there's no coincidences. I look out the window, and the media starts showing up at my house again. They hadn't been there all day, setting up their tripods. And 10 minutes later, they Roger Stoned me by coming in, and around 3 p.m., pounding on the door, 10 to 15 agents deep. I was home alone with my kids. I had to call my grandmother. My neighbors had to come over. They watched my wife leave. They told me that. They watched my wife leave to go to a doctor's appointment. I was home alone with my kids. I grabbed a tablet. And told my kids, I put them in the other room. My little boy was napping, and I put the other kids in the room and said, you guys put on your tablet while Daddy, talks to my friends out here. And I didn't know what else to do. And then they handcuffed me, my hands and feet, and walked me out to take me down to be arraigned. As Brandon said, one of the hardest moments as someone who loves this country was hearing United States of America versus Derrick Evans. That was gut-wrenching to hear that. Long story short, I was originally charged with 2 misdemeanors. They came back, all that were for misdemeanors. They came back with 2 more misdemeanors a little bit after that. After that, they offered me a verbal plea deal of choose your misdemeanor, we'll drop all the other charges. I said, send me the paperwork, I want to see that in writing. Then they came back and said, we're withdrawing that verbal plea offer. This is coming from the highest levels of the DOJ. Anything that we discuss from this point forward is going to go up the chain of command and down the chain of command. Buckle up. It's going to be a long ride. This is in June of 2021. And we're indicting you on a felony charge of 1512 obstruction of official proceeding, which is a 20-year prison sentence. So now I'm facing 24 years in prison. And I went to the bathroom and bawled my eyes out because I didn't understand federal sentencing guidelines. I think I'm going away for 24 years. And I got 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls, but for some reason all I could think about was I'm not even going to be out in time to walk my little girls down the aisle and give them away at their wedding. I'm going to miss their entire life. That's where I was at mentally. It was very hard. Hard on my wife as well, who's a rock star, had been an amazing rock and supporter throughout this entire thing. The next plea offer was 3.5 years, I think it was. And at this point, I understood federal sentencing guidelines, and I was looking at around 4 if I went to trial and was found guilty on all that. And I said, look, I'm not, you want years of my life, you're going to have to come take it. I'm not going to plead guilty to that. And they financially drain you. When they arrest you, they get all your banking information, okay? They know all your accounts, how much money you have, your assets, all of these things. They watch you and they dwindle that away, just pushing everything back, and, you know, another continuance, all these things. As Brandon said, the emotional stuff with getting debanked, they've done a great job explaining that, but I want to explain another side of that. My wife and I, we were college sweethearts. When we were in college, we'd open up a college checking account at Chase Bank at the time, and had these accounts for 10 years, had our mortgage through this bank. Never missed a payment, not even when I was in college, never had a late fee, never anything. Not only did they cancel our checking accounts and everything else, and like he said, PayPal, all these other places, they called the note on my house on the mortgage. Okay, I received a letter in the mail that we had 45 days to either pay off the balance or lose our home. Okay, with everything else going on, we went to a local bank, a local community bank, and I don't want to say their name. I don't want to get them in trouble. But they worked overtime to get this refinanced for us so we didn't lose our home. But I mean, on top of everything else and facing all these years in prison, that's what we were dealing with. Wells Fargo has done this to J6ers as well. There's multiple banking institutions who have not only canceled, but I'm literally calling the note on the mortgage. You get a letter in the mail. When we got it for the checking accounts, it said from the date of this letter, you have 30 days to remove all your money. You've been canceled from Chase Bank. And when we got it, we had like 13 days left by the time we received the letter in the mail. You know, all your, you know, auto pays, all these things. I run businesses as well, all that. And so it was a chaos for a little while there. And like, we're the most canceled people in the world. And listen, getting deplatformed is one thing, and getting debanked is the worst thing that anyone could ever go through. I can't stress enough how just terrible that was. So anyways, in January, they offered me a final plea offer of a civil disorder. It's still a felony. It was a lower felony. They refused to come off the felony charge. My wife came to me crying and said, we need you home, and your kids need you here. I used to always say that I would never plead guilty to something I didn't do. I'd take it all the way. I cried the day that I signed that. You know, I have a duty as a husband and a father and a leader of my family to be there for my kids as well. So I signed that plea deal, ended up getting sentenced to 3 months in federal prison, where I was housed with murderers and rapists and everything else you could imagine. 3 months in prison. My kids are still suffering from PTSD like you wouldn't believe. When I first got home from prison in October, if I walked out the door to go to the mailbox down the driveway, my kids would start crying because I'd never been away from them longer than 2 days ever. And when I left, I told them that I was going out of town to go to work. They're 5 and 6 years old. They don't understand what's going on. I'm not going to tell them when they get older. I'm not ashamed of what I did. This is the first time I've ever traveled since January 6th because we're not allowed. I just got permission to travel for the first time. My wife texted me last night and said, I know you're really busy, but I need you to FaceTime the kids because they're terrified right now that you're not coming home. And, you know, I think it's important for everybody to understand that this is bigger than the names you see in the headlines. These are affecting families like you wouldn't believe. We have men sitting in prison right now whose kids, they don't even know what their dads look like because they've been in there. They were 1 or 2 years old when they went in, and they've been in there for 2 years. They don't even know they have no visits, no phone calls, none of these things. So this is so much bigger than the name you see in a headline, and I'm honored that you guys care enough to show up here and listen to these stories, but I'll end it there for now. A little bit when you heard 80 years in prison, right? I want you guys to fully understand that there are multiple people right now locked up in pretrial and some who have just been convicted and waiting sentencing who are facing the rest of their life in prison for non-violent crimes, okay? I'm not talking about anyone who went there and broke or beat anybody up or anything like that. I mean, non-violent crimes potentially spending the rest of their life in prison, okay? So that's where we're at with things. Yeah, the cheapest lawyer that I found was a $50,000 retainer up front just to get started. Okay, and first of all, it's even hard to find lawyers who would even take on these cases in general. But then when you do, we're talking about average people here, you know, blue-collar workers, blue-collar people who just, you know, working and want to be left alone. And like Brandon said, now, that is the biggest issue right now, is there's no funding for these people. And, you know, look, I don't care to admit it, my family and I, we were on the verge of bankruptcy. I don't know how we avoided bankruptcy, to be honest with you, and I don't know if we will ever financially recover from this. And there are families out there, to Brandon's point, I know multiple mothers in the J6 community who have had their house paid off. You know, they're old, retired on Social Security, and they've refinanced their homes so that they can pay the legal defense funds for their children. And this is going to be a generational impact in terms of the financial consequences of this. So I just wanted to touch on the power of the media in this entire ordeal. So, as most people know, a typical media cycle was 48 hours in the news, and this has been going on 2 years, and they're still just beating this down on a regular basis. So this has tainted the jury pool in more ways than we could imagine, and through that, most of the people in the jury, no matter what your charges are, they think that you were someone who was beating a police officer and trying to overthrow the government. So because of that, they don't think that the charges are enough, and they're going to convict everyone. And so there is no way that anyone is going to get a fair trial in D.C. And I want you guys to think about this. Anytime there's ever been a high-profile major event that's taken place, the trial has always been moved outside of that area, except for now they won't do that. And then the last thing I want to say is, when have you ever known criminals, domestic terrorists, insurrectionists, someone who's done these crazy things, who is begging for the video evidence to be released for the entire public to watch that? Right. Okay? Think about that. The only people who are begging for the video evidence to be released are the January 6th defendants and their families. The ones who are suppressing that and don't want anyone to watch the video is the government, who's saying, trust us, they did those things, but you're not allowed to see the entire thing, right? So just wanted you guys to think about it from that perspective. We're begging. We would love for the video evidence to be released out there for everyone, open source. I don't care, because I want the truth to be out there. And we all have a lot of our own questions. We haven't seen the videos. Well, I haven't. I never saw the videos, which they're required to provide to me under the Brady rule for exculpatory evidence. I thought it was 14,000 hours of video that they were hiding from me. Now I found out it's 40-something thousand hours of video that they have hidden. And so I've not seen the videos myself, and I was someone who went through the trial and everything. And the last thing I want to say is, this man down here in the end, gosh, man, you are one of the strongest, most amazing people I've ever encountered. Guys, he didn't make a decision between a plea deal and going to a fair trial. He made a decision between a plea deal or being found guilty and facing 24 years in prison. That was the difference. If I could have got a fair trial, I would have went to trial as well. I don't think people can put in perspective what this man has went through down here for us. So, the frustrating thing about the media is we expect attacks from the liberal media, right? But what's been frustrating for all of us is the silence from the conservative mainstream media, who doesn't want to cover our side of the story on January 6th. And that's been very frustrating, to say the least. Really quick, I wanted to touch on when I went to prison, I served 8 days in solitary confinement because I refused the COVID vaccine. If you refuse the vaccine, then they put you in quarantine, which is solitary confinement. So I spent 8 days in there. And the only reason I bring that up is we have guys and women right now in pretrial who are in solitary confinement for over 700 days. Guys, I'm assuming most of you never went through solitary confinement. It is torture. There's no sunlight. There's no grass. There's no. You don't get out to shower. You don't. I mean, a 24-hour lockdown is what I was in for 8 days. No phone call.
Me too.
My wife and kids. Yeah, my wife and kids didn't know where I was at. Didn't know that I was okay. I mean, I told them ahead of time. I probably, this was probably going to happen, but they had no clue. And so I say all that just once again because I want to remind you guys that there's people 700 plus days pre-trial on nonviolent charges with no bond. We're not even talking like $1 million bond and something crazy. No bond. Okay, for people who self-surrendered, turned themselves in and said, hey, I'm on your list. I want to come in and turn myself in and answer questions, and they end up in the DC gulag. The DC Gulag and the Northern Neck Regional Jail are the two worst places that a J6 prisoner or any prisoner could be right now. These people are living in conditions that you can't even imagine. What you've heard from us and what we've went through, it is terrible. It scratches the surface on what these guys right now in the DC Gulag and the DC jail and the Northern Neck jail, what they're going through. It honestly just scratches the surface on what they're going through. So for my few minutes, I want to make a plug for the Patriot Mail Project. Okay, they're not asking for money, guys. This is a online website, where a database rather has an updated list of every January 6th political prisoner who signed up and wants letters. Okay. The guys in the Gulag, the guys in prison, they don't see this. They don't see the support that we have out here. I will never forget how liberating it was for me after I got out of prison. I got back on social media and I saw that there were people who actually cared. Once again, there is no coverage of this on the media other than bashing you. You're canceled from everything and you don't realize the support. It is very lonely as a January 6th. I was experienced with the media just from being in politics. And I still was not prepared to handle the attacks of the media that came from January 6th. So I don't understand how some of these people who have never been involved with the media getting thrown into that, how they are mentally handling those things. There's no words to describe it. So go to the PatriotMailProject.com. And once again, they're not asking for money, guys. They're asking you to send a letter to a January 6th political prisoner. And this is how important it is. When I was in prison, I broke my day into two chunks. In the morning, after I got out of solitary and into general population, I got out and in the morning I had my 15-minute phone call with my wife and kids, and just tell them how I was doing or whatever. And then from there, I looked forward to 4 o'clock mail call because I knew at 4 o'clock that I was going to get letters from American patriots all across this country showing me support. I still have every single one of those letters at my house right now. I read every single one of them. And I would go back every day and read that. And that, you have no idea. And if you don't know what to say, there was some people who didn't know what to say. Go grab a tweet or something or a news article and literally print it off and send it in to show them that there's people who cares. I received postcards from people, and it was amazing to just mentally escape outside those prison walls for a few minutes to just look at a picture of Idaho and imagine what's going on out there, from an American patriot who took the time out of their day to send me a letter. We've all heard what's happened, with Matt. Your letter could save someone else from going down that path if you take the time to do that.